Hey guys, Mike here with CRZYCYBR logging on, and we have a really exciting one today. This is a build I've been looking forward to for a long time. Now this is the first video in the dual epic XMRIG Miner build, which I have affectionately named Hulk. The theme of this build is going to be purple and green for the major components. I might even paint the graphics card to match, but we'll have to see about that when the time comes. There's a lot of work going to be involved in this build, and I want to put the videos out in a timely manner. So this build's only job is going to be to mine the cryptocurrency XMR Monero. If you're not familiar with Monero, Monero is a cryptocurrency designed for anonymity and financial privacy. The cryptographic techniques used in Monero make it very difficult to trace the transactions between users. Now, for those of you who are interested in mining for yourself, Monero is one of the best to start with. It's super easy to set up, and it is the most effective when mining using a CPU, unlike, for example, Bitcoin that uses GPUs to mine, making the initial entry a lot cheaper than something like Bitcoin. You can just mine it on an old laptop or your current desktop when you're not using it, and it's super easy to set up. A little bit of background on Monero. It was initially launched in 2014 and was spearheaded by someone known only as Thankful for Today, as a fork of a crypto called Bytecoin. There's a lot more to the backstory of Monero. As well as a lot more details to be discussed about the privacy features and the tokenomics, and there's a whole lot of stuff about Monero that we could go into, but that's for a different video. But I will say this though, the current financial institution in this country has completely wrecked the dollar to the point of no return, and we can assume that something is eventually going to take the dollar's place because the system we have now will crash as a matter of design. It's not an if it will crash, it's when. And we can pretty much assume that a central bank digital currency is going to take its place. And if that happens, there's going to be zero financial freedom, complete control. And I want you to think about China's social credit system when you think about that, because that's the path that we are currently on in this country. Now, I feel that the largest number of citizens adopting a crypto like Monero is really a crucial and necessary step for the future of this country and for the freedom of its citizens. If everybody adopted Monero and we made all of our payments that way, we could really return all the power in the financial system back to the people and away from these central banks and these families who control them. And to a degree that financial freedom that hasn't been seen since before the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but I have a lot more thoughts on this. And if you'd like to hear them, if you'd like me to make a video about it, go ahead and drop a comment and I'd be happy to make one. So, back to the build. So this build has been a concept and kind of in the design process for almost 3 years. I had concept sketches that dated back to 2022, and I bought the CPUs in January of 2022. And I've been super busy, life gets in the way, but here we are making the first video, about to start the meat and potatoes of this build. And I really think that it's going to require a lot of people to get on board, but I really think that a cryptocurrency like Monero could truly change the financial future for the better for everyone in the world. Alright, so now let's get into what you guys really want to see, which is the hardware and the various components for the build. So first up, we have the Supermicro H11 DSi motherboard. The board features an SP3 socket with a 240 watt TDP, and it has two of them, as you can see. So it supports up to 4 terabytes of registered ECC DDR4 memory and speeds up to 3200 megahertz and 16 DIMM slots. It has two PCI 3.0 by 16 lanes, and it has an M.2 slot running off of PCIe 3.0-2, times 2. It has two SATA DOM connections, dual gigabit Ethernet ports, two USB 3.0 ports, and two USB 2.0 ports, and it has 8 different 4-pin PWM fan and speed control connectors. And those connectors are going to play a big role into the custom water cooling loop that this build's going to have. So now I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know kind of the main attraction of this build, and that is going to be that it's going to have a completely custom open chassis designed and fabricated by me. And that is going to be I've been looking forward to this for a long time, and I'm super excited that it's about to begin, and hopefully this week we'll begin the fabrication process. But now, more of that, stay tuned, but right now we're going to continue going through the hardware. So now for the part that everybody loves seeing, the CPUs. So these two are absolutely the stars of the build, and these are two AMD EPYC 7551 CPUs. Now each of these bad boys has 32 cores and 64 threads. So altogether the build will be pushing 64 cores and 128 threads. I think it's going to do extremely well processing the Monero transactions. The CPUs, they have a 2.0 gigahertz base clock and a 3.0 precision boost clock. And with these CPUs, the CPU will change to the boost clock depending on the workload. And since XMRIG by default maxes out the CPU usage on every computer I've ever mined on, I think it's probably going to be running on the 3.0 clock most of the time. And to further increase performance, these 7551s can link up in a multiprocessor SMP configuration. The CPUs, they offer multi-threading as well. And there are a lot of different ways to configure this to increase the mining performance, including the unlocked multiplier, which greatly simplifies the overclocking process. So we're gonna probably, one of the videos in the series is just gonna be spent just optimizing the CPUs for mining. So the TDP of these CPUs, they're super hungry. It's at 180 watts each. I'm still kind of doing the math on the requirements of the GPU, and I had a 1000 watt power supply reserved for the build, but we're probably going to need to be pushing a 13 to 1400 watt power supply unit. I mean, because we're almost at 400 watts before we even think about RAM, graphics cards, fans, pumps, all the stuff that this build's going to need to run efficiently. Or optimally, more like. It's not going to be very efficient. So the power supply choice might change during the build progress, and I have more time to crunch the numbers and really figure out exactly how much power this thing's going to be pulling. So each CPU has 96 kilobytes per core of L1 cache memory, 512 kilobytes per core of L2 cache, and 64 megabytes of shared L3 cache memory. And all of these features, as well as the price I paid for them, it really shone as like a great pick for this project. I'll eventually post a cost breakdown and a build sheet for these, but I didn't pay anywhere near as much as I thought I would for these. And I'm going to link the seller I got them from too, because he was super cool as well. Got them off of eBay. So now moving on. So moving on to the RAM, here we have a couple examples of the RAM that we're going to be using. And we have 32 gigabytes registered DIMM memory. It operates at 2,933 megahertz. And when it's all said and done, we will have over half a terabyte at 512 gigabytes in this system. Now, this amount of RAM for what I'm doing is most likely completely overkill. I've spoken to a couple guys on the Monero subreddit, and they kind of also think that it's overkill. RAM does have a pretty significant impact on your mining performance, but up to a certain level, after a certain amount of RAM, it's kind of negligible, any increase in performance you would get from having more. But if we have 16 slots, we're going to fill them. So that is the memory. Moving on. Next up to bat, we have the FreezeMod pump. And this pump will be available on CRZYCYBR.com. It has a built-in LCD screen that displays water cooling metrics such as pump RPM, liters per hour, temperature, and more. There's, I believe, if I remember correctly, there's 8 total metrics displayed on this screen. I really like the aesthetic appeal this pump is going to offer, both with the display and with the see-through sections, which will allow the coolant, which will be purple to fit into the theme, to be seen in like a nice large chunk, which will balance out the green of the motherboard. Now, coupled with this FreezeMod pump are some fittings. So now we're getting into kind of the nitty-gritty of the hardline water cooling pieces and parts. Now, for the fittings, we have these EPYC fittings. They're super high quality. They've got beautiful knurling. The machining is really high quality. O-rings are nice and soft, which is good because when you see low quality O-rings, they're a lot harder. The material, the rubber they're used to make them is a lot harder. The logo is super clean. There's no ink bleed or runoffs. I mean, they're just really high quality pieces. And these will also be available on CRZYCYBR.com. So I got 20 of these because I'm going to be doing water cooling projects in the future. And obviously the more you buy, you get a discount. And really pleased with these fittings right here. Really pleased with these. And they are 16 millimeter tube diameter. And they have the standard 1/4 inch threads. These will work with pretty much any build, any accessories, thread right in. This is the O-ring that came with them. The part that seals against the tubing goes in there like that. Now, this is something that you probably won't see on a lot of other builds, but I have these EPYC Y fittings. Or excuse me, the FreezeMod Y fittings. So these are going to be a crucial part of this build, and they're going to be a completely necessary part due to the fact that we have 2 CPUs. Now, we'll get into the water cooling layout and the loop later on in the series, but that should give you guys a pretty good hint as to why we need these. Maybe we don't strictly need them, but they're going to really make it crispy and clean and efficient. And finally, we have some FreezeMod plugs. These came with the FreezeMod pump, and they're most likely just going to be to decide which part of the pump you want to pull from. And again, really impressed with the quality of these. They're weighty in your hand. They're not light, cheap aluminum. They feel really solid. They have a nice weight to them. And all of these will be available on CRZYCYBR.com. So here is a very underlooked part when it comes to doing custom hardline cooling builds. These are what are called bending blocks, and this set is by Barrow. So this is going to allow us to get really precise bends on our tubes and make them really clean. Now, this set is made by Barrow, and additionally what we have from them is the bending tubing. So this goes inside the diameter of the tube, which we will put in there as we heat it, and so that when we bend the pipe, it maintains its inner diameter, and we don't want it kinking or deforming in any way. We want optimal water flow going through this build. So these components I picked up, we have 180 here as well as 45 here. So these will get a lot of use out of, and I'll have them forever. These are also going to be available on CRZYCYBR.com, as well as the bending tube, and most likely some of the freeze mod tubing. So the freeze mod tubing, it's 20mm OD and 16mm ID, and I went with clear so that the purple coolant will be on full display and be able to really give that nice contrast between the complementary colors from the green of the motherboard to the purple of the coolant. And it is acrylic tubing. So those are all the parts you guys get to see for right now. Those are pretty much covers it all besides the power supply, the rest of the RAM, and the fans for the radiator, which are in the mail currently. I've had an unbelievably rough time finding fans for that radiator because either on the page where I bought the radiator from, they misread the specs wrong and said it was for 80mm fans, but when I measured the mounting holes, it was not 80mm. So I've actually ordered 3 sets of fans for this radiator. Here's one of the ones I ordered, but surprise, did not fit, regular size fan. But yeah, so finding fans has been an absolute chore, and I'm still not sure the ones coming in are going to be correct, but we're going to find out, baby. Next on our water cooling list is we have the radiator. It is a 240mm, 40mm thick EPYC full copper radiator. And to be completely honest, I'm not quite sure that this is going to be enough for the build. I thought it might be, and it really depends on what speed we run at which we run the fans, and you know, there's a bunch of different variables, but I'm thinking that by the time the filming of this video is over, I'll have another one of these in the mail, and we'll just add another one to the loop. Think of it like 2-stage cooling, because freeze mod pump has 2 outlets. So that is, I mean, now just straight up going into this product itself, it's pretty high quality. It's got nice branding on it. If I could get that to focus. It's got nice branding on it. Got the part number. Fittings threaded in flawlessly. No rough threads. And I was a mechanic for about 7 years before I ventured into the tech field. So trust me, I know how to feel some rough threads and gauge the quality of a mechanical product. And you know, fins are all flawless. Nothing came in bent. The packaging it came in was pretty nice as well. Nice packaging, solid. It came with padding inside to protect it. Got the quality control stickers, QR codes. EPYC is really making some quality products, and they're a really, really cool manufacturer based out in China. And if you're looking to go with a water cooling build, I would highly recommend checking out the EPYC products on the CRZYCYBR website. You really get a lot of bang for your buck, and if I'm honest, I have a strong suspicion that a lot of the nicer brands are actually having their parts manufactured by EPYC. Moving on, we have one of everybody's favorite things in a computer build, and I'm super excited to disappoint you guys, but we are going with an EVGA GeForce GTX 760. So this build, I'm not going to be gaming on it. I'm not going to be editing videos on it. I'm not doing any graphics card intensive things with this PC. We're only focused on the power of the CPUs and making them run as efficiently and as optimally as possible. So I had this laying around from one of my other million builds I've done. So it's going to be going to the build. I'm not going to go into the specs of this just because this isn't the focus of the build. This is just something that will let me plug in a monitor and see what I'm doing. And if I had a cheaper and smaller one, I probably would have gone with that. We're going to explore maybe some vertical mounting solutions for this in the build though. And this might get painted to match. So yeah, clearly I probably should have cleaned this before I filmed, but this is just like probably the least important part out of anything in the build. Alright guys, so now we're going to go ahead and get into kind of like the design process for this build. So as you can see, these are my sketches from, I believe, the end of 2021, if I remember correctly. This project has been a brainchild of mine for a long time, and I've really been thinking about it for a while. So going into these sketches, we're going to start up here at the top, and if you take a look at the very topmost sketch, you can kind of see the basic design that we're going to be going with. An open chassis that prominently displays the motherboard, water cooling loop on full display, the green and purple, and this is going to be the basic design of the case, which is that the reservoir is going to be held up in the air off to the side, level with the bottom of the motherboard. Those distances might change a little bit if I find out that, you know, the bends are a lot easier if it's lower or if it's in a different position. But this is going to be and going to remain the concept for the build from this point going forward. So now moving on to the lower part of the original concept sketches, you can see the general idea for where the radiator and the power supply will be mounted, as well as if you look on the left side below the motherboard, you will see one of the computer metric screens that have become extremely popular in recent years. Hopefully we'll find one that doesn't have ADA 64 and be able to make our own templates. I've been an artist my entire life, so I really want to make something custom for the build. But below, next to that system display monitor, you can see that the base in this original concept sketch was a kind of just a very simple 4-post base with basically 4 fins extruded out in all 4 cardinal directions in order to support the build. Looking over to the right of that, you can see the original concept for the base. And, you know, I really like the idea of this. I really like the base being just as business as possible, like no fat, no fluff, but with some important features such as cable management, you know, mounts for the radiator. And one of the cool things about being a mechanic is I have all sorts of knowledge on really cool and efficient fasteners like quick disconnects and all sorts of other mounting solutions that I could incorporate into this build. And I'm really excited to kind of start playing around with that. So now let's move on to the more recent concept sketches of the build that I've done relatively recently. So before we get into the most recent base concept sketch, we're just going to take a look at this one. So this was more or less kind of just like a cool image to advertise the build and put, you know, the hardware specs and you know, kind of just let people know what's going on. But I really enjoyed doing this sketch, and I think it really effectively relays the message of what this build is going to be, as well as just being artistically technical and, in my opinion, quite cool. So you can see again we have this the freeze mod pump. The positions changed slightly. In this sketch, I don't know if the position of that is ideal because it'd have to make some weird bends to get to the CPU. But so for the final build, we are really going to have to play around with the placement of that freeze mod pump. Just because finding the shortest possible point to the CPU is not always the best solution in terms of water cooling. And the longer that the fluid is away from the source of the heat, typically that's better. It results in lower temperatures. So playing around with the position of that pump is going to be a project in and of itself. You see in this image I incorporated the EPYC water blocks into the sketch, as well as one of my merchandise designs with the download skull there and the logo. So that's cool and all. Let's move on to the functional concept sketches, such as the base. Alright, so here is the most recent concept sketch for the design and the architecture of the base for the computer, or the case, quote unquote, if you will. So you can see by my notes here is that I took some real inspiration from nature and trees and plants for the design. Nature always finds the most efficient way to do things, as well as the most secure and strong in its design. So you can see that this base concept really resembles a tree in a lot of ways, and this is going to be very similar to what the final product looks like. Now in this sketch, you can see I obviously don't have sketches for the designs for how the radiator is going to be mounted, as well as the power supply, because I want to kind of keep that power supply hidden, and we can't really just stack it on top of the radiator because we don't want heat from the power supply negatively impacting the cooling of the radiator. So that's something I'm still actively working on. I have some sketches on my Surface right now, trying to find a practical solution to that problem. And you can also see we have the freeze mod pump, just sort of an offshoot that will mount the bracket that came with it, and so that will be, give the effect that it's hovering in midair right next to the computer, which I think is a really cool design. Since the beginning of design, people have been trying to hide fasteners and mounting solutions, right? Like look at a car, like back in the 70s, you would see Phillips head screws in the interior occasionally, and now that's completely gone. There's a real push to hide all fasteners and design and processes these days. So another thing that I've been doing in terms of researching and getting ready for this build is I've been scouring the internet for different types of wiring harness quick disconnects, and they really only require a piece to be bolted or welded onto whatever frame you want the quick disconnect to be in, which remains stationary, and then the harness attaches either through zip tie or through a specialized clamp to the wiring harness. And then there is sort of like similar to a hydraulic connection where you would just pull the collar back and then the connector pops off. And I really like the idea of that, just for both cable management as well as making it easy to service if I want to remove or swap out components at any point. And I'm also exploring different options for mounting the metric screen with magnets to the lower offshoots you see coming down from the trunk. And I think that would be also a really good feature, both for cleaning and maintaining the build, as well as just things like that. I'm a sucker for. I think it's really cool. Anything quick connect, I'm into it. I think it's cool. I think it's smart. I think it's ingenuitive. And I really like finding solutions like that, so I've been exploring those types of options as well. Now, in terms of the material that the case will be made out of, I do believe I am going with cold pressed steel. It's the easiest to weld. I have a MIG welder in the garage, and that's most likely what I'll be using to build the case, along with a bunch of cutting and a bunch of grinding to shape things and make them look pretty. And most likely it's going to be painted a nice flat black, just to really highlight the purple and green components of the build. So yeah, guys, that about wraps this one up. I hope you guys like the build. I hope you're interested in seeing it. I hope you guys find it as cool as I do. And this coming week, I'm going to actually be starting the fabrication process on the case itself. So I'll be showing some of the tricks I picked up along my way during my time as a mechanic to fabricate things in 3D space in an efficient way. So I'm really excited for that video. It's going to be a really cool one. There are plenty of videos where people are, making their own cases, but I don't really see too many where people cut and weld stuff. So I think this will be pretty unique, and I hope you guys think so as well. So, with that being said, guys, Mike with CRZYCYBR logging off. Be sure, if you're interested in any of those EPYC water cooling products, to check the CRZYCYBR.com website. We're going to have them all up and priced out and ready to be shipped. We have new merch coming soon with a bunch of specialized designs, as well as a really, really cool robot design coming up that I've been working on for a little bit now. And I'm really excited for the build. I'm really excited for the future. And I hope you guys like it. Mike with CRZYCYBR logging off.